Part 40. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, Past and Present. Chapter 391. Chapter 391, The Saint of Southern Xinjiang. Mr. Zhang has been away for so many days, why hasn't he come back yet? Hearing Sulayun mention Mr. Zhang, Sun Gro asked subconsciously. Sulayun was also puzzled. There was still no news back today, but she had asked Sun when to take people to find Mr. Zhang. It's not far from the capital, so the news should come back soon. After sending Sun Gro back to Jiawan, Sulayun went to the small black room instead. In the house, the maid was feeding Granny Lan. Just one mouthful of rice went in, and Granny Lan spat it out. Sulayun had just entered the house and saw this scene, but his expression did not change much. "You want to die?" Sulayun asked with a smile as Granny Lan spit out the rice in her mouth again. She waved her hand to the maid and motioned for the maid to get down. The maid quickly cleaned up the mess and left the house. "I will not seek death." Grandma Ian's tone was light. Her mission has not been completed yet, and she will not give up this life easily. Sulayun stared at Granny Lan for a while, and then said, "Suwaner is from southern Xinjiang, just like you. If you look carefully at her appearance, you can still tell something." Grandma Lan did not answer. Her identity as a southern Xinjiang person was revealed. It was not difficult for Sulayun to think that Suwaner was also from southern Xinjiang. But soon, Sulayun's next words made Granny Lan change her expression. "You have always been by her side, taking care of her." In other words, Suwaner's identity must not be simple. "Let me guess, she can't be the daughter of the former saint of southern Xinjiang, right?" Grandma Ian's face changed drastically. Even though she reacted quickly and lowered her head, Sulayun still saw this scene. As for Suwaner's identity, she didn't completely guess it. After knowing that Granny Lan was from southern Xinjiang, she specially sent people to investigate what happened in southern Xinjiang 15 years ago. It was discovered that the previous saint in southern Xinjiang was found to have lost her innocence. After giving birth to a daughter, she disappeared. The time coincides with the appearance of Suwaner and Granny Lan in the capital. Sulayun can be regarded as a test. Unexpectedly, he found out this test. "You." Granny Lan knew that her reaction just now must have been looked at by Sulayun. She could speak, but she didn't know what to say. In the past 15 years, fewer and fewer people know Suwaner's identity. Occasionally, she also feels that this kind of life is very good. But when she returned from her dream at midnight, the saint's face appeared in front of her. Before she died, the saint asked her to take good care of Suwaner and asked her not to think about revenge. Grandma Colin can't think about it. Her parents and brother also died in that battle. She hated Dashan dynasty very much. She wants Suwaner to avenge her and the saint. Sulayun couldn't help but feel a chill when he saw Granny Ian's poisonous eyes. She thought of her past life, when Granny Lan tried her best to help Suwaner get to that position. Did she have other motives? But before Granny Lan could make any plans, Suwaner took action first. Sulayun couldn't help but smile. If Suwaner in her previous life knew that she had killed her most loyal person, would she regret it? "Why are you laughing?" Grandma Lan didn't understand why Sulayun was laughing, so she subconsciously felt that Sulayun was laughing at them as people from southern Xinjiang. "If it hadn't been for your grand dynasty, the saint wouldn't have died. What is the relationship between your southern Xinjiang saint and our Dashan dynasty?" Sulayun raised his eyebrows and asked. She only knew that after the accident of the previous saint, there were fewer and fewer people from southern Xinjiang. Nowadays, it is as difficult as climbing to the sky to find a person from southern Xinjiang in Dashan dynasty. Grandma Lan realized that Sulayun was not laughing at her identity just now, so she immediately shut her mouth. Seeing this, Sulayun also knew that there was nothing he could ask. She stood up and left a few words before leaving. I heard that the saint of southern Xinjiang is immune to all poisons. I wonder if her daughter has inherited this physique. Grandma Lan lowered her head, but her eyes narrowed severely. Invulnerable to 100 poisons. Suwaner certainly doesn't have such a physique. She looked up suddenly, but could only see the door slowly closing. And Suleun's back was vaguely visible in the crack of the door. Suzhou, a small village. Lao Zhang ran out in a hurry and saw Sun Wen and others standing not far from the fence. Mr. Zhang. Sun Wen recognized it for a while before confirming that it was Mr. Zhang. Just because Mr. Zhang, who was standing in front of him now, had only one eye exposed, and the rest of his body was wrapped in cloth. Why are you here? Miss, I haven't received any news from you, and I'm worried about you. Sun Wen smiled bitterly. He did not expect that such a thing would happen in Suzhou. Just like 15 years ago, no one expected that a plague would also occur in the capital. Lao Zhang sighed. I thought the situation could be under control before, but I didn't expect that it would be a chaos overnight. Several soldiers had no way to leave, and we had no chance to send the news back. Does the prefect of Suzhou know about this? Sun Wen asked. Look at these guards, they are all common people in the village who are not sick. Someone has informed the Suzhou magistrate of the situation a long time ago, but no one has come. When this matter was mentioned, Mr. Zhang was filled with anger. These villagers were also from the Dacian dynasty, but the prefect of Suzhou actually ignored them. I'll go back and report to the lady right away. Sun Wen also looked serious. Lao Zhang nodded. Don't let your lady come, I'm afraid it will affect the worms in her body. The subordinates understand. After saying that, Sun Wen took a few guards and left. Who would have thought that before he had walked a few steps, he saw a group of people wearing official clothes running over. He directly stopped the patrolling villagers and Sun Wen and others. What do you do? Some villagers asked loudly. The leader said, a serious disease has occurred in your village. For safety reasons, you are not allowed to leave this encirclement. Some people had dispersed privately a long time ago and literally surrounded the entire village. Even those who were not sick were not allowed to leave. Sun Wen and others also couldn't leave. This official, I am the bodyguard of the Sun family in the capital, can you? Sun Wen was interrupted before he finished speaking. I don't care which family's bodyguard you are, even if you are the emperor's bodyguard. If you go back to the capital and bring this disease back with you, I'll see how many lives you can lose. Can you let me send a message back? Send a message, the man frowned and held a branch against Sun Wen's chest to push him in. You can't do anything. If I find any of you sneaking away, don't blame me. You are welcome. Sun Wen clenched his fists. Have you reported this matter to the court? Eh? Are you trying to find trouble? What does it have to do with you? Hearing this, the man was obviously flustered for a moment. Soon, he glared at Sun Wen and left quickly, as if he was afraid of what Sun Wen was asking. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 392. Chapter 392 News returned. When they saw his reaction, Sun Wen and Mr. Zhang couldn't understand it. The prefect of Suzhou is trying to hide the matter. Don't worry, Mr. Zhang. Sun Wen whispered. Lao Zhang looked at Sun Wen and lowered his voice, do you have any ideas? Not far away, someone saw them talking together and came over. Sun Wen had no choice but to distance himself from Mr. Zhang, but he still took advantage of the opportunity to give Mr. Zhang a look to reassure Mr. Zhang. The village was surrounded and areas were divided inside. One side is where the sick villagers stay, and the other side is where the villagers who are not sick stay. Lao Zhang sighed, he couldn't care about this now. He turned around and went back to his original house. Wang Chen was also wrapped in white cloth and was diagnosing and treating patients. What's going on outside? Seeing his friend come in, Wang Chen asked subconsciously. When she noticed her friend's ugly face, she realized something and put down the medicinal ingredients she was grinding. Walking to his friend's side, Wang Chen looked out the door. Men in official attire could be vaguely seen pushing the villagers. People from the government. Lao Zhang responded, the situation is not very good. Where are Sun Wen and the others? He was also detained and cannot go back for a while. Wang Chen was not surprised by Mr. Zhang's answer. She turned around and continued to grind the medicinal materials. That's all we can do. Lao Zhang let out a deep breath. The prefect of Suzhou thought that by surrounding the village, he could prevent the plague from spreading. It was ridiculous. Half of the people in this village have been infected with the plague. Before the onset of the disease, there were many people traveling to and from the village or entering the county town. The more you conceal it, the more serious the consequences will be. Now, he can only place his hope on Sun Wen and Suleun. I hope Sun Wen can send the news back. At night, Sun Wen quietly came out of the house. Blowed a whistle at a place. Soon, a homing pigeon flew over. Sun Wen stuffed the written note into the bamboo tube. At the moment he released the carrier pigeon, someone who heard the noise ran over. But there were only fallen leaves on the ground, and there was no one around. The man scratched his head and muttered, "Did you hear that wrong?" After saying that, he turned and left. Sun Wen ran down from the tree and looked into the air. He could no longer see the homing pigeons flying far away. He stood for a moment, then turned and left. I received the news from Sun Wen in the early morning of the next day. The homing pigeon flew directly into Kayahuaziazu and woke up the green willows keeping watch. Kualayu stepped forward, took out the note from the bamboo tube, and released the carrier pigeon. Kualayu's face changed drastically when he saw the words written on it. Ignoring the time, she hurriedly ran into the house. "Miss, no, something happened." Suleun was awakened by the sound of Kualayu, but she also knew that Kualayu would not wake her up for no reason. Suleun's face turned ugly after taking the note handed over by Kualayu. Lian Xian ran into the house without even putting on half of her sleeves. "What's wrong?" Mother Zhang was also awakened. "I'm going to see my grandfather." Suleun quickly stood up, and with Kuilu and Lian Xian waiting on him, he changed his clothes and hurried out. Sun Mansion's study room is brightly lit. Sun Xiao, Sun Changping, and Su Ye were all standing in the study. "Yun'er, is this news true?" Sun Xiao shook the note held between his fingers and asked. Sun Changping and Su Ye looked at it with heavy expressions, having the same problem as Sun Xiao. Suleun nodded, "This is the news from Sun Wen. He is now with Mr. Zhang." "Such big news," the prefect of Suzhou. Sun Xiao did not continue, "Yun'er, come with me to the palace. This matter cannot be delayed. If it is true, once the plague is allowed to spread, the consequences will be unimaginable." "Grandpa, I'll go too." Su Ye glanced at Suleun worriedly. He was afraid that his sister would go to the palace to meet the saint. If she was nervous and made a mistake, he could still help her. Sun Xiao glanced at Su Ye and said, "Okay, you will come with us. Changping, you will be in charge of the house." "Yes, father." Sun Changping responded. Soon, the three of them got on their horses and went to the palace. In an emergency, taking a carriage will only waste time. Although Suleun had been to the racecourse several times, Su Ye was still worried if she was asked to ride alone, so the brother and sister rode the same horse. "In this way, we can rush to the palace as soon as possible. After passing the palace gate, you can no longer ride a horse." Sun Xiao walked in front, walking very fast. Su Ye was afraid that Suleun wouldn't be able to keep up, so he slowed down. Hurrying along slowly and hurriedly, I didn't fall too far behind. As early as when Sun Xiao entered the palace, Someone had spread the word. Eunuch Wan hesitated again and again, but reported it personally to Emperor Jianwen, who had gone to bed. Although he didn't know what urgent matter there was that warranted such a rush, Wang Gonggong also knew Sun Xiao's temperament. If it wasn't really an urgent matter, he wouldn't have to be so anxious. Emperor Jianwen was woken up by Wang Gonggong, with a somewhat angry look on his face. After learning about the situation, he calmed down a little. Change my clothes. With the service of the palace maids, Emperor Jianwen changed his clothes and went to the imperial study. In the past few days, Emperor Jianwen had been busy for a long time with matters concerning King An and the Turks. Finally I had time to rest for a while, but things happened again. Sun Xiao handed the note forward and asked Sulayun to explain a few words to Emperor Jianwen. Your Majesty, please make a decision early. What is the name of Mr. Zhang you are talking about? Emperor Jianwen asked a strange question. Sulayun was stunned for a moment, and at Sun Xiao's signal, he replied, Your Majesty, Mr. Zhang's name is Zhang Yaoliang. Zhang Yaoliang. Emperor Jianwen muttered thoughtfully, with a flash of light in his eyes. Eunuch Wan, please pass on the order and send someone to Suzhou to conduct a strict investigation. Yes. The father-in-law responded and left. But I felt a little panicked. The situation was very similar to that of 15 years ago. 15 years ago, the plague in the capital came from the neighboring towns. Is it possible that we are going to make the same mistake again? Emperor Jianwen's order was quickly issued. But what is faster than the order is the speed at which the plague spreads. In just one night, the plague was discovered in several villages. Even in the city of Suzhou, the situation was discovered. The prefect of Suzhou hurriedly left the city with his family and gold and silver treasures. Before he had gone a few miles, he was caught by people sent by the imperial court. The capital received the news, and the people from the imperial hospital were also sent out by Emperor Jianwen. Sulayun was really worried about his master and Mr. Zhang, so he quietly left the capital with Lian Xian and Kui Lu. It is less than half an hour away from Suzhou. Lian Xian put down the curtain and looked at Sulayun with Kui Lu, who closed his eyes and rested. There was worry and uneasiness in his eyes. If you are afraid, you can go back. Sulayun opened her eyes. She didn't blame Lian Xian and Kuilu for saying this, but she meant it sincerely. She is confident that she can protect them, but it is normal for Lian Xian and Kuilu to be uneasy. End of this chapter. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 393. Chapter 393 Senior Brother. Liang Xin and Kuilu looked at each other and shook their heads at Sulayun. Wherever the lady goes, the servants will follow. Moreover, Lian Xian also has selfish motives. She knows that Sun Wen is in Suzhou now, so she is naturally willing to go to Suzhou. I'm just worried that if something happens to the lady, they won't be able to help. But if we don't have time to go back, what should we do about Miss Yang's illness? Kuilu asked hesitantly. Sulayun explained, I have already had 3 injections, and there is no rush to do the next 2 sooner or later. But just in case, I have asked someone to leave a letter to shopkeeper Wang. If I can't go back in time, I will ask Wang the shopkeeper helps. It turns out that the lady has made all the arrangements. Liang Xin and Kuilu also understood Sulayun's determination. It seemed that they had to go to Suzhou. The carriage swayed for a while, and the master and servant could already see Suzhou not far away. Soon after, several guards stopped their carriage. My young lady is the grandson of the general who protects the country. Please make it convenient for everyone. Kuilu took out the token and handed it to several people. The guards did not want to stop Sulayun from going to Suzhou, but they were afraid that they would not know the current situation in Suzhou. Miss, there is a plague in Suzhou. If you go there and don't take adequate protection, you may be infected. I know medical skills. My master is in Suzhou, and I'm here to help. The guard was stunned when he heard this. Does he know medical skills? He has never seen any girl with medical skills. I think the most important thing for you to stay here is to prevent anyone from running out, right? Suleun said slowly, I just want to go in, and I won't let you suffer any punishment. It is indeed as Suleun said, they were guarding outside Suzhou to prevent people from inside from running out and taking the plague to other places. Lian Xian stepped forward, took out the money from her arms and handed it to several people. It's easier to do things after collecting money, not to mention letting people in. The guards hesitated for only a moment before making way to allow the three people to pass. The plague has broken out in several villages outside Suzhou city. Along the way, the master and servant could occasionally hear wailing sounds that came and went. The expressions of Lian Xian and Kui Lu became more and more serious, with unbearable eyes flashing. Suleun looked calm and walked all the way until he finally arrived at the village Sun Wen wrote in his letter. Unexpectedly, I met Sun Wen as soon as I went there. Miss. The moment he saw Suleun, Sun Wen almost jumped up. But the man had already arrived, but he couldn't send Suleun out again. When Mr. Zhang and Wang Chen saw Suleun being brought over by Sun Wen, they looked at each other and smiled helplessly. I knew you girl was definitely coming. Lao Zhang handed Suleun and the others clothes, which could provide some protection. It's okay, there aren't enough manpower here, so you can help a little bit if you come. Suleun did not hesitate and put on his clothes. Since she came to Suzhou, of course she wanted to help. Seeing this, Lian Xian and Kuliu also put on their clothes and quickly joined the crowd to help some doctors. Suleun followed Mr. Zhang and Wang Chen to the hut on the other side. Saw the person in the room at a glance. It is Bai Rong. Master. When Bai Rong saw Wang Chen, he shouted first and then looked at Suleun. However, he saw a shocked look on Suleun's uncovered face. What did she just hear? Master. Wang Chen introduced the two of them with a smile. You should all know each other, Leun. This is your senior brother, Bai Rong. Hello, junior sister. Bai Rong had known for a long time that Suleun was his junior sister, so he was not surprised. But Suleun was in a daze for a long time before he came back to his senses. Bai Rong is her senior brother? This incident was really a big shock to her. Hello, senior brother. Suleun, who came back to his senses, also returned the salute. However, they didn't bother to exchange more pleasantries, and several people began to talk about the plague. This time the plague is coming fiercely. After just one morning, the number of people infected in Suzhou city has increased. Moreover, I have tried several prescriptions, but to no avail. This plague is expected to be more severe than the previous ones. Lao Zhang said in a deep voice. Several people showed solemn expressions. But the severity of the plague was far beyond their imagination. That night, one after another seriously ill patients died. Tufts of flames rose up in the village. The dead patients must be burned with fire immediately, otherwise the body will be left behind, and when it starts to rot, the situation will become more serious. In just 3 days, Suleun didn't know how many people he had sent away. She pursed her dry lips and continued to walk to the next patient. Miss, please rest first, you have been up for 2 days. Lian Xian was worried about Suleun's health. Although she and Kuliu and other helpers were busy, they could still change people to work at night, but the doctors were different. There are so many patients that the doctor is completely exhausted. I'm fine. Suleun swallowed his saliva, and after Lian Xian's persuasion, he took a few sips of water and continued working. There is not much she can do but do her best. Furthermore, there was clearly no such big plague in the previous life. When Sulayun occasionally thought about it, she would wonder whether these things had changed because of her rebirth. Just thinking about it like this, the feeling of guilt will hit Sulayun, which will make Sulayun even more unable to stop. Having been busy until late at night again, Sulayun finally put down his work and went back to rest after Wang Chen and Mr. Zhang repeatedly persuaded him. Sulayun woke up after only sleeping for more than 2 hours. She felt uneasy. It was a long time to sleep for so long. Sulayun opened the door and could already see the rising sun. Taking a deep breath, he walked to where the patient was. Seeing Sulayun coming, Lian Xian and Kualai wanted to say something, but Wang Chen stopped them. "I'm afraid your young lady won't be able to sleep, as long as nothing happens to her, that'll be fine. This slave understands." Liang Xin and Kualai knew what Wang Chen said, but they still couldn't bear to see their young lady suffer so much. Two maids together, unless they are really too busy, one of them must stay by the young lady's side, so that if anything happens to the young lady, they can be the first to know. After the discussion, Lian Xian and Kualai felt quite relieved. The imperial doctor sent from the capital has also arrived and is busy working in Suzhou City. It's just that we can't find a radical cure, so everything we do now is in vain. Girl, look at my husband. A woman grabbed Sulayun's leg. She was lying on the ground, her clothes patched and covered with mud, and she was very embarrassed. Sulayun hurriedly helped her up, not caring about the dirt on her body. Take me there. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 394. Chapter 394 Return to Beijing. As soon as Sulayun opened the door, he smelled something. It can't be explained clearly, it just passes by in a flash. No matter how good Sulayun's sense of smell is, he still can't identify it in the current environment. Worried about the patient's condition, Sulayun didn't pay much attention and hurriedly walked to the bedside. The man was lying on the bed, wailing and scratching his face and body with his hands. The exposed skin alone was already a mess. The most terrifying thing is his hands, where the skin and flesh are almost visible. Sulayun could not feel the man's pulse under such circumstances, so he had to call Kualai to prepare a bowl of soup for the man. The man's wife stood on one side, looking at her husband-in-law, tears bursting from her eyes uncontrollably. "Miss Su, you must save my husband." The woman cried loudly. If there was really no other way, she would not go to Sulayun to ask for help. It was actually her husband-in-law's illness that was already too serious. Furthermore, it was clear that she was infected with the plague, but her husband's situation was different from others. Kualai brought the boiled medicine. She still had things to do, so she had to let the woman give the medicine to the man by herself. "Please feed it to your husband-in-law." Well. The woman also knew not to cause more trouble to them, so she quickly brought a bowl over and gave her husband medicine herself. I think the couple is also very affectionate. Although the man was in unbearable pain, he still drank the decoction his wife gave him, one mouthful at a time. Gradually, the stinging and itching dissipated. The pain in the man's eyes faded away, and the movements of his hands also slowed down. Although there is still some itching, it is much better than before, and he can control himself. "When did you find out you were sick?" Sulayun had an intuition that men's diseases might be helpful in solving the plague. The man frowned and racked his brains and said, "I usually travel around to sell some groceries. About a month ago, I passed by a village and unexpectedly contracted a cold in the middle of the night. At first, I thought it was a minor illness, ignored it, and went there anyway. I rushed home, but I didn't expect that the disease would become serious as soon as I got home." Village, wind, and cold. Sulayun vaguely felt that these words were familiar. Soon, she thought of it. "When my uncle and aunt came back, Didn't they pass through a village and get cold? Is there any medicine in the village that can cure wind and cold? How do you know? The man was stunned. Didn't he just say that? I thought the medicine was expensive, and I've never seen that kind of medicine for treating colds, so I didn't buy it. I didn't expect it to end up like this. The man was very upset. The woman knew that the man did not buy medicine to save money for the family, and she suddenly felt sad. Sulayun thought for a moment. Do you know where that village is? Let me think about it. It seems like we are going south. Sulayun wrote down the route the man told him, and then he had time to pay attention to the strange smell he smelled earlier. She walked around the couple's house and quickly discovered the source of the smell. Hey, this is not. The man saw what Sulayun was holding. I brought this from that village. Sulayun is holding a blooming flower in his hand. She knew a lot about flowers, but she still didn't recognize the flower in front of her. Can you lend me this flower? Ms. Su, you can take it, it's okay. The woman quickly said that the flower was brought back by her husband-in-law. There happened to be a flower pot, so she put it in casually. Unexpectedly, it actually bloomed. The man also nodded. It was just a flower, nothing to be reluctant to part with. Sulayun smiled and said, thank you. I probably have some clues about your illness. I will ask my maid to bring you medicine later. Thank you, thank you. The woman thanked Sulayun repeatedly and sent her out of the house. But Sulayun, who got the flowers, was even more grateful to them. This flower is indeed miraculous in treating the plague. Where did you get this flower? Wang Chen asked after staring at the blooming flowers for a while. Sulayun briefly explained, then Wang Chen and Mr. Zhang looked at each other and nodded. This flower is from southern Xinjiang. It seems that this plague is indeed related to southern Xinjiang. After witnessing the strangeness of this plague, Wang Chen and Mr. Zhang became suspicious. Now it is confirmed. It's really a big help for you to bring back this flower. Lao Zhang said. Sulayun said, as long as it's useful. What happened next had nothing to do with Sulayun. She is still busy with her patients. Until Zhang Lao and others developed the prescription. Patients with mild illness will be completely cured after drinking a few patches of medicine. Those who are seriously ill will be mostly cured after drinking it for 3 to 5 days. The recipe spread, and patients in other places gradually recovered. Sulayun can finally breathe a sigh of relief. Miss, there is a letter from Beijing. Kualai ran in with a note. Since the prescription was released, the blockade on Suzhou has been lightened. Sulayun took the note, which was sent by his grandfather Sun Xiao. She looked over carefully and sighed softly. It seemed that she would have to spend some time coaxing her mother after she returned. When he saw the second picture, Sulayun's expression changed slightly. After a while, she burned the note cleanly. Miss, did something happen in the house? Kualai arrived late. Sulayun shook his head. There's nothing wrong at home. We'll go back when things get better here. Although the plague is highly contagious and easy to catch, because of the plague in the capital 15 years ago, the Dacian dynasty's approach to the plague was still very quick and effective. If the Suzhou prefect had not suppressed this matter, those people before would not have died. I originally thought I would go within a few days, but I didn't expect that it would take another 10 days. The situation in Suzhou has finally stabilized. Sulayun had something hidden in his mind. As soon as the matter was settled, he hurriedly set off back to Beijing. Lao Zhang and Wang Chen still had things to deal with, so it was inconvenient to leave with her. The journey back to the capital is only 3 hours. On the road, Sulayun couldn't help but fall asleep as the carriage rocked. Woke up again, but was shocked. Miss, it's the young master. Sun Wen shouted outside. Sulayun opened the curtain in surprise and saw a group of people walking not far away, led by Xiao Shenjiao and his brother Su Ye. Elder brother. Sulayun got off the carriage and walked forward quickly. Are you coming back from the northwest? The afternoon she left the capital, Suye also set off for the northwest. No matter how important the plague is, it is not as important as the conversation with the Turks. Therefore, even if Suye knew that Sulayun had gone to Suzhu, Suye could not run to stop his sister. Now seeing Sulayun, who had obviously lost a lot of weight, Suye felt distressed in his eyes. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 395. Chapter 395. It's time to stop. Suye stepped forward and said, I have lost weight. I need to make up for it after I return to Beijing. I got it, brother. Sulayun glanced back, but did not see Prince Yu Xiaojin. Logically speaking, if the three of them go to the northwest together, Xiao Shenjiao and Suye shouldn't be the only ones who come back, right? But there were so many people at the moment that Sulayun couldn't ask, so he had to go back to the carriage first. Follow Xiao Shenjiao and Suye and head towards the capital. After returning to Beijing, Suye had to enter the palace, so Sulayun returned to the Sun Mansion first. Sun Gro knew that Sulayun was coming back early in the morning, so she waited at the door early. Seeing the carriage approaching, his expression changed. When Sulayun got off the carriage, what he saw was Sun Gro with a straight face. Mother. Sulayun quietly stuck out his tongue and walked quickly to Sun Gro. Mom, Yunar is wrong. Her first words were an apology. Sun Gro was about to have an attack, but when she saw her daughter talking softly and losing weight, her resentment was gone. All that's left is heartache. Look at you, you managed to gain so much meat, but the result is good, you have lost weight again. Sun Gro felt sorry for Sulayun after all, so she just pinched her cheek gently and sounded reproachful. Sulayun knew that Sun Gro was soft-hearted. Mom, Yunar really knows that he was wrong. Yunar must raise the meat back as soon as possible. You. Sun Gro sighed helplessly. Strangely enough, sometimes she felt that her daughter was very independent, and sometimes she felt that her daughter had not grown up. However, since it is my own child, of course I have to bear it. With Sun Gro looking at him, Sulayun ate 2 small bowls of rice in a row before he couldn't help but rub his belly and said, Mom, I'm really full. Knowing that Sulayun had indeed eaten enough, Sun Gro nodded her eyebrows and said, Okay, go and rest when you're full. We'll talk about other things tomorrow. Yunar listens to my mother. What he said, but Sulayun's actions were not like this. She went to the house where Granny Lan was imprisoned, and her eyes darkened a bit when she saw the empty room. Miss, it's my subordinate who is not doing things right. Sun Wu knelt in front of Sulayun. Granny Lan was under his care, but now she disappeared. He should be punished. Go and receive the punishment yourself. Sulayun spoke calmly. Sun Wen beside him wanted to plead for his brother, but he also knew that it was not the time to speak. Sun Wu lowered his head and said, Yes. Sulayun walked around the house and found nothing. Subsequently, she went to the house where the Li family and his wife were imprisoned. Like Granny Lan, the Li family and his wife are also missing. 3 people were rescued at the same time. Those people who can break into the Sun Mansion and rescue people must be very strong. Sulayun suddenly twitched the corner of his mouth. Judging by the time, Suwaner should have found her. Sure enough, early the next morning, Mrs. came. Suwaner has now reconciled with Li Rui and has returned to the Su family. It's just that the heli incident has caused a big fuss, and now Suwaner's reputation is completely ruined. But during those days, Sulayun was still in Suzhu, and it was a pity that he didn't have the chance to see that wonderful scene. The whole Sun family has the same hatred towards the Su family. Even if Mrs. Su comes to visit, she can't get the slightest bit of good looks from them. But Sun Gro was Mrs. Su's daughter-in-law after all, So don't treat Mrs. so coldly, so she did not appear. Rather, Qin Zian stepped forward. What brings you here, Mrs. Su? Where is Sulayun? Mrs. Su's face was not pretty, and her tone was a little harsh. As soon as Qin Zian heard this, she knew that Mrs. Su was probably here to cause trouble. She glanced at the nanny next to her and asked someone to call Sulayun. She then faced Mrs. Su and said, Mrs. Su, please sit down first. You are not young anymore. What can't you let the servants talk about? Why don't you let the servants talk about it, you have to come here yourself. Mrs. Su gave Qin Zian a very gloomy look, sat down in her seat, and said no more. Qin Zian couldn't say much, so he could only wait for Sulayun to come over. Sulayun, who had been prepared for a long time, was not surprised that Mrs. Su would come in person. She came to the front hall dressed neatly. Mrs. Su. Sulayun, hand over the antidote. I will not pursue this matter. Mrs. Su had no intention of chatting with Sulayun. Sulayun chuckled lightly, Mrs. Su, are you asking for an antidote? I won't hide it from you, there is no antidote for that thing. If you send the person back, maybe Suwainer can live a few more years. Sulayun told the truth. She gave Suwainer poison, but she didn't think about detoxifying Suwainer. Don't say there is no antidote, even if there is an antidote, how can she give it to her? Sulayun, you are really vicious. Mrs. Su was so angry that she was shaking all over, but there was nothing she could do about Sulayun. Until this moment, she realized that without Sun Gro, the Su family's situation was actually not as good as she thought. None of her sons or daughters are truly talented or learned. If Su Changqing hadn't relied on the Sun family, how could he have the title of Marquis he is now? As for Su Changqing, Mrs. Su calmed down, gave Sulayun a sinister look, and left with the others. Yunur, what will Mrs. Su do? Qin Zian was a little worried. Mrs. Su looked terrible before she left. Sulayun comforted her, second aunt, don't worry, the Su family won't be able to cause any trouble. Let alone the Su family, whatever Lu Hong wanted to do was impossible. Afternoon, the Su family and the Lu family were surrounded by soldiers. The reason is, collaboration with the enemy and treason. The Su family and the Lu family were all imprisoned in the prison. Collaboration with the enemy and treason is a capital crime. Sulayun bowed to Xiao Shenjiao and said, thank you, His Highness, King Jin for your help. You're welcome, Miss Su. Xiao Shenjiao's eyes were light and he didn't care about Sulayun's thanks. He is just for Tat. What's more, Sulayun has now become his mother's apprentice. If he can help, it won't be a big deal if he helps. Sulayun didn't know what Xiao Shenjiao was thinking, but he just felt that his eyes occasionally became weird. She couldn't help but tremble. It wasn't that she was frightened, but why did she feel that Xiao Shenjiao looked at her with a bit of affection? It is not a man's affection for the woman he likes, but a kind of affection for a junior. When did she become Xiao Shenjiao's junior? If there is nothing else, Your Highness King Jin, I will leave first. Xiao Shenjiao nodded and watched Sulayun leave. Not long after, a figure appeared in the house. It's time for you to stop. Xiao Shenjiao looked at the shadow standing in the corner, the queen is still alive. I know. Ying's voice was extremely hoarse. Xiao Shenjiao frowned slightly, understanding what Ying meant. He knew it but couldn't stop. End of this chapter. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 396. Chapter 396 Whereabouts. Don't worry, you won't be implicated in this matter. Ying said lightly. But this is not what Xiao Shenjiao is worried about. If. Just as Xiao Shenjiao started speaking, the shadow had already disappeared. Only one token was left in place. Xiao Shenjiao stepped forward and took the token, which was Yuolo's unique identity symbol. He sighed lightly. It seemed that next time they met, he and Ying might become enemies. In the sky prison, from the cell where the Su family was imprisoned, wailing sounds could be heard from time to time. Collaboration with the enemy and treason is no small matter. Before a thorough investigation was carried out, the Su family members were all punished. Even Mrs. Su was beaten 20 times and is now lying on the straw mat, faceless. Su Changqing was a very filial man. He endured 50 hardships all his life, endured the severe pain, and had to take care of Mrs. Su. As for the remaining people, Su Yuqing and Su Chongzhon were huddled in the corner. No one will care about them. Su Wan'er was lying next to Mrs. Su. Like Mrs. Su, she had also suffered 20 strokes, but from the looks of it, she was even more serious than Mrs. Su. That pale face looked like it would die in the next second. Wan'er, how are you? At this time, Mrs. Su still has the energy to care about Su Wan'er. Su Wan'er had no intention of answering Madame Su. She was almost furious. Who would have thought that when King Yu was discussing peace with the Turks, he secretly conspired with the Turks to get rid of Xiao Shenjiao and Su Ye for the Turks. But the problem was discovered by Xiao Shenjiao and Su Ye, and King Yu's actions were exposed. This matter was reported back to the capital, causing Emperor Jianwen to be furious. Ye Wang's move was undoubtedly treason and collaborating with the enemy. Moreover, what he wanted to harm was his brother. How could Emperor Jianwen not be annoyed? The reason why Sulayun didn't see Xiao Jin when he came back that day was because Xiao Jin was locked in the prison car at the back. The prison car was covered with cloth, so Sulayun naturally couldn't see Xiao Jin inside. The relationship between Su Wan'er and Prince Yu lasted until she married Li Rui. But I didn't expect that just such a small thing would be found out. This brought the Su family into contact with King Yu. Wan'er? Mrs. Su asked again. Su Wan'er finally came back to her senses and forced an ugly smile. Grandma, I'm fine. In fact, I felt very sick to death. But Su Wan'er thought that the Su family's current situation was related to her, so Su Wan'er did not dare to expose it. But she didn't know that Su Changqing had actually been in contact with King Yu for a long time. In the cell opposite, there are several members of the Lu family. Although Lu Hong received the board, he was forced to sit on the ground and still looked calm. Su Changjing and Lu Huayuan couldn't bear the pain and had long been lying on the ground. After a while, a voice came. Both families couldn't help but look over. Seeing Shen Dan and Lu Shuiying being brought in. Mother. As soon as Lu Shuiying saw Su Changjing, she was about to rush towards her, but was stopped by the jailer. Why are you running? Your cell is here. The jailer pushed the two people and several maids into the cell. It's right next to the Lu family's cell. Mother. Lu Shuiying's appearance was better than theirs. She and Shen Dan were not punished for the time being. Su Changjing straightened up and stumbled to her daughter's side. Shuiying, how are you? Damn it, King Yu, what's wrong? He wants to do such a thing. If Xiao Jin was in front of Su Changjing at this time, Su Changjing would probably stand up and give Xiao Jin a few slaps. Had Xiao Jin not done such a thing, how would they have been implicated? Shen Dan heard Su Changjing's words and looked over with gloomy eyes. But in prison, she could do nothing. Lu Shuiying was about to cry but had no tears. She had just married Xiao Jin. She had not even enjoyed the blessing for a few days before she was implicated by Xiao Jin. She really didn't know why she was crying. And looking at the situation in the prison again, Lu Shuiying was speechless. At this time, she couldn't help but call out Lu Shuiya. As a married woman, Lu Shuiya will not be implicated in this. Thinking about this, Lu Shuiying wanted to cry even more. She cried countless times just after the news about Xiaojing came back. Now she really can't cry at all. Lu Shuiying was about to say something when she suddenly heard a wail. Everyone looked up and saw Su Weiner clenching her fists tightly and neighing on the ground. Looks like he has been greatly tortured. The jailer who heard the sound ran over and knocked on the cell door. Quiet. But it has no effect. The pain Su Weiner is suffering now is even more severe than the suffering Su Leun suffered because of the goo insects before. Stepping into the cell, Su Leun followed the jailer, and soon heard a familiar voice. Her figure also caught everyone's eyes. Su Leun. Su Yuqing and Su Chongzhong faced the direction Su Leun came from, so they saw each other first. After the two men called out the name, there was a moment of silence in the cell, and only Su Weiner's unbearable pain could be heard. Su Leun walked to the cell, and the jailer stepped forward and opened the door. Ping Le Xiangjun, please go in. Facing Su Leun, the jailer looked extremely respectful. Su Leun stepped into the cell and walked up to Su Weiner within a few steps. Su Leun. Su Weiner read out Su Leun's name word by word, with deep hatred in her words. Her current pain was all caused by Su Leun. Su Weiner, where are Granny Lan and the Li family? Su Leun looked at Su Weiner condescendingly, with a cold tone. As soon as Su Weiner heard this, she turned her face away, but after a while, unable to bear the severe pain in her body, she gritted her teeth and said, "Give me the antidote, and I'll tell you." Su Weiner, you are not qualified to negotiate terms with me now. Su Leun's expression became calmer and calmer, making people feel extremely cold-blooded when they saw it. Su Leun, does this matter have something to do with you? Su Changqing didn't know where the confidence came from, and suddenly spoke. Although he doesn't like Su Leun, his blood bleeds on him. Su Leun, if you still want to come back, take us out quickly. Shut up. Su Leun's eyes flashed across Su Changqing's face. It was clear that there was no disturbance, but it made Su Changqing feel cold. Is this the way you talk to your father? I don't have a treasonous father. Su Leun's tone became colder and colder. Su Weiner, since you have nothing to say, I'll leave first. After saying that, Su Leun turned around and left. When she walked to the cell door, Su Weiner spoke, I tell you, I said. She gasped in pain, it hurt too much. For Su Weiner, it is difficult for her to endure this kind of pain. Su Leun did not stop loving and walked straight out of the cell. It was as if he had not heard Su Weiner's words. But a moment later, a jailer came, mentioned Su Weiner, and took her away directly. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 397. Chapter 397 Cured. Mrs. wanted to reach out to pull Su Weiner, but when she reached out, Su Weiner had already been taken out by the jailer. What are you going to do? Her voice was not that loud, it only echoed in the cell, and the guards who walked far away could no longer hear her. Su Weiner saw Su Leun again, and then she realized that she had really come out of the cell. The whereabouts of Granny Lan? Su Leun asked coldly. Su Weiner moved her mouth, as if she wanted to say something but didn't know where to start. Su Weiner, if I can take you out, I can take you back. How could Su Leun not see what Su Weiner was thinking? Could it be that he thought that she would be fine once she came out of the cell? Grandma Lan is not in the capital, but those two people are at the Su family. Su Weiner didn't even want to mention the Li family and his wife. After all, these two people were not her biological parents, so why should she care more? As for Granny Lan, where is that? I forgot. Su Weiner clutched her chest. The severe pain had subsided, but she still felt uncomfortable. I'll take a rest for a while, maybe I'll remember it. Su Leun suddenly smiled and said, okay, you can rest. After saying that, She got up and left the house. This made Suwaner a little confused. Did he let her go so easily? But an hour later, Suwaner knew that it was not that simple. The severe pain that once occurred every 2 days came again, and she collapsed to the ground in pain, twitching her hands and feet feebly. Screams of pain spread out of the house, and there were many guards standing outside the house, but no one paid attention. Suwaner struggled to crawl towards the door of the house and said, "I want to see Suleun." But no one responded. 2/4 of an hour later, the pain dissipated. Suwaner could only lie on the ground, her hands and feet were too weak to do anything. She now understood why Suleun left so simply. Clearly knew this. Suleun finally came after Suwaner's third attack was over. Looking at Suwaner, who was sweating profusely and lying on the ground not knowing whether she was alive or dead, Suleun opened his mouth and asked, "Where is Granny Lan?" On the outskirts of Beijing, there was a Zhuangzi. Suwaner struggled to speak every word, but she didn't dare not say it. "The map is in my house." In order to survive this pain, Suwaner even bit the tip of her tongue, but it was a drop in the bucket. In front of me, Suleun's figure was swaying, as if he was about to leave. "Antidote? Didn't Mrsu tell you?" Suleun squatted down, his eyes level with Suwaner's. "There is no antidote for this poison." She stood up and looked at Suwaner's wide eyes. She couldn't even breathe and fainted. What Suleun didn't tell Suwaner was that the number of attacks today had ended. Finding the map from the Su family, Suleun took the people to Zhuangzi on the outskirts of Beijing. "It's just that Granny Lan probably heard the news." Suleun arrived at the place, but no one was found. "Miss, we found something." Sun Wen and Sun Wu walked up to Suleun with the things they searched. "Grandma Lan must have left in a hurry and left a lot of things behind." Suleun looked around and found a book recording poisonous poisons. "When I opened it and took a look, what was written inside was none other than Zimugu." Suleun put the book away and took out a small jade medal. "The words engraved on it are in southern Xinjiang. Miss, would you please take someone to search the surrounding area?" Sun Wu said. Suleun nodded and agreed to his proposal. In the capital city, the atmosphere became increasingly tense. In Prince An's mansion, Wang An was lying on the bed, and Xiao Shenjia was sitting not far away. "Third brother, fourth brother, Xiao Jin, is it true that he did all those things?" Wang An couldn't come to his senses for a long time about what Xiao Shenjia told him. In his heart, the fourth brother Xiao Jin is a rare dignified gentleman, and he feels that the other person does not have that much desire for the throne. But knowing that the iron ore and jade seal matters were arranged by Xiao Jin, even though King An used to think Xiao Jin was a good brother, now he is only angry with Xiao Jin. Because of these two things, he almost died in prison. Of course that was just King An's illusion. In fact, Emperor Jianwen had known about it for a long time and was just setting the stage for Xiao Jin to be exposed on his own initiative. Xiao Shenjia did not explain this point. Some things don't need too much explanation. Wang An grabbed the remaining bedding and asked, "What do you plan to do, father?" "Demoted to a commoner and banned in Prince Yu's mansion." Just 9 words, it became Xiao Jin's fate. When Suleun heard this, he blinked his eyes but said nothing. Instead, he went to Xiang Lingling's house. After learning that something happened to the Su family, Mrs. Xiang completely settled down. Today is the day to take off the black cloth from Lingling. In the room, Xiang Lingling was still impatient. "Cousin, can I take it apart?" "That's it?" Suleun retracted his hand that checked his pulse and returned. Hearing this, Xiang Lingling immediately reached out and wiped it from her eyes. But when it came time to take off the black cloth, Xiang Lingling hesitated. "Cousin, it'll be okay. The windows and doors have been closed to avoid facing the sun too directly." Suleun put his hand on the back of Xiang Lingling's hand, led her to unravel the black cloth layer by layer, and then took off the black cloth. Fluttering her eyelashes toward Lingling, she slowly opened her eyes. The vision was still a bit hazy, but she could really see it. She subconsciously covered her mouth, and tears slowly gathered. "See it?" Sulayun asked. Xiang Lingling replied with a tearful voice, "I see it, cousin, I can see it." She turned her head, and the moment she saw Sulayun, she couldn't help but stretched out her hand and hugged Sulayun. "It's a good thing to be able to see." Sulayun gently stroked Xiang Lingling's back, knowing that this girl had suffered a lot during this period. Stayed at the house for a few more days to ensure that this situation would not happen again. "I want Mrs. Xiang and Xiang Lingling to go back to Yunchinj. As for Xiang Lingling's purpura, there is no cure. All she can do is try to avoid the disease from occurring." At the gate of Sun Mansion, Sulayun bid farewell to Lingling. Looking at the carriage driving away, she sighed softly. "Miss Su." The sound of flowing wind sounded. Sulayun looked up and saw that Lu Feng had not been seen for some days. This is what the prince asked his subordinates to send. Lu Feng handed over what Xiao Shenjiao requested and left quickly. Holding the package, Sulayun waited and didn't know what was inside. After returning to the yard, she opened the package. There is a medicine bottle and a letter inside. Sulayun opened the letter. After reading it, his eyes became more profound. This medicine bottle contains the antidote for the mother-in-law poison. What Xiao Shenjiao said in the letter was that Granny Lan had been caught, but she was still useful and could not be handed over to Sulayun. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, Past and Present. Chapter 398. Chapter 398. The dust has settled, finale. As compensation, Xiao Shenjiao also gave Sulayun a gift. Late night. Sulayun appeared in Prince Yu's palace dressed in black. Xiao Shenjiao stood not far away. "Miss Su, please come this way." Following Xiao Shenjiao, Sulayun slowly walked into the palace. Walking through the veranda and gardens, we arrived at our destination. The residence of Prince Yu Xiaojin. No, it should be called Commoner Xiaojin now. "Your Highness, are you sure I will come?" Sulayun finally spoke at this time. Xiao Shenjiao said, "It's just a gamble." He took a step forward and opened the door. The moonlight shone into the room, illuminating the room a little. Xiaojin was tied to a chair, but her expression was very comfortable. "I think he was drugged." Sulayun blinked and asked in a deep voice, "If I want to kill him, can your highness help me cover it up?" Xiao Shenjiao's eyes darkened a bit. After a few breaths, he opened his lips and said, "Okay." Sulayun couldn't help laughing. "Your highness, don't worry, I was just joking. It is not difficult to kill Xiaojin. But this would be too advantageous to the other party. It would be better to let him just look at that high position forever and be unable to do anything." Sulayun took out a medicine bottle from his arms, stepped forward, and fed a pill into Xiaojin's mouth. The pill melted in his mouth and disappeared from Xiaojin's lips and tongue without the need for swallowing. Sulayun walked out of the house. Xiao Shenjiao fell behind and closed the door for her. "Your Highness, aren't you curious about what medicine I gave him?" Perhaps it was Xiaojin's current fate that made Sulayun want to talk more. It turns out that the person who once controlled her life would also have his life controlled by others. Xiao Shenjiao glanced at Sulayun with an unpredictable expression. He could feel that Sulayun was now filled with an indescribable joy. Just as he didn't know why Sulayun hated Xiaojin. "What is it?" Xiao Shenjiao followed Sulayun's words and asked. Sulayun knew that Xiao Shenjiao was agreeing with her and was not really curious. "Poison." Sulayun paused. "He can only lie in bed for the rest of his life." "Good." Xiao Shenjiao didn't say much. One word "good" means that he will take care of this matter for Sulayun. The changes in the capital city seem to have nothing to do with Sulayun. She took her home, occasionally sewing embroidery with Sun Gro, and occasionally going to Qin's house to see Qin Qiangshuang and her children. Qin Qiangshuang took good care of herself and proposed reconciliation. The Wen family was reluctant to agree at first, but after seeing the fate of the Lu family and the Su family, and seeing the Sun family becoming increasingly prosperous, they did not dare to delay any longer and agreed to the divorce. That Prince Wen was naturally happy, and as soon as they reconciled, he made Tao Rui his royal wife. I was laughed at by many people around me. When Tao Rui's pregnancy could no longer be concealed, Mr. Wen realized that he had been deceived. As for the turmoil in the Wen family, it has nothing to do with Qin Qiangshuang. Brother Suye is very busy these days, often following Xiao Shenjiao and running around outside. When I come back to my house occasionally, I only stay for an hour or two before leaving. Until 2 months later, before the autumn hunting, an imperial edict was handed down. Han made the 13th Prince Xiaolin the crown prince. The news shocked many people. Even within the DPRK, there were waves. Emperor Jianwen only discussed the matter with a few senior ministers about making Xiaolin the crown prince. Most of the remaining officials don't know. No one expected that he would be the 13th prince. After all, Emperor Jianwen's preference for Jin Wang Xiao Shenjiao was obvious to everyone. Evidently before, Emperor Jianwen still seemed to want to make Xiao Shenjiao the crown prince. But it is hard to disobey the emperor's order. Even if some people are surprised, some are confused, and some even want to object, it cannot change the matter. Sulayun was just stunned for a moment when he heard the news and was not too surprised. She had vaguely noticed earlier that Xiao Shenjiao didn't seem to have any yearning for the throne. In those dreams, it can also be seen that Xiao Shenjiao would not have stood up if Xiao Jin had not killed everyone. The only thing she was curious about was that Emperor Jianwen appointed the 13th prince as the crown prince. Is there any trace of Xiao Shenjiao's intervention in this matter? Sulayun didn't want to go during the emperor's autumn hunting festival, but was dragged out of the house by his mother. You've been in the house these days, so you should go out and walk around, right? Sulayun is already afraid of heat. In July and August, it is so hot that people lose interest in walking around. She almost stayed indoors. The room was filled with ice cubes to cool down, which made her feel more comfortable. But Sun Gro felt that her daughter was unwilling to go out, so she took Sulayun to Kyochi together. At the beginning of September, there was still some warmth. Sulayun was sitting in the carriage, drowsy. Sun Gro couldn't bear it and felt helpless when she saw her look. She can only rest like this. When they arrived at the hunting ground, Sun Gro would not let Sulayun continue to sleep. Both mother and daughter changed into riding attire. Before Sun Gro got married, she could ride a horse and shoot arrows. Even if you haven't practiced for many years, your movements are still as skillful. Sulayun, on the other hand, was a little stumbled. She had gone to the horse farm to train before. The horse farm had a flat road and was different from a hunting ground. So, Sulayun sat on the horse and got used to it for a while. Seeing that Sulayun became more proficient, Sun Gro took her daughter to the hunting ground. Now that she was out, she naturally wanted to enjoy herself. With his mother accompanying him, Sulayun had a great time playing for 3 days. Until the night of the 3rd day, the sound of fighting was heard outside the tent. The words "assassin," "emperor" can be vaguely heard. Several guards came to the tent here quickly, asking the women to stay in the tent and not to wander around. About half an hour later, the sounds outside gradually stopped. "Madam, miss, please go out and take a look first." Quilio left the tent and ran in after a while. "Madam, miss, you should be fine." Sun Gro breathed a sigh of relief. How could someone assassinate you at this time? I don't know what's going on with Ye. But soon, King Guo came running. Suye knew that Sun Gro and Sulayun would be worried, so he asked King Guo to come and report that they were safe. In addition, Sulayun was informed that Mr. Zhang's grandson had been found. Unexpectedly, Zhang Yang was among the assassins. Fortunately, the other party did not actually join those people, otherwise he might have suffered a lot. Sulayun was thoughtful. Although she didn't see those people, when she heard that Zhang Yang was with them, she would naturally think of those people from the 11 clan. Those 11 people hate the royal family. It is not impossible to assassinate Emperor Jianwen. When the movement outside disappeared, Sulayun and Sun Gro could have a good sleep. At dawn, Sulayun had just walked out of the tent when he saw Suye coming. Noticing Suye's bandaged arm, Sulayun stepped forward. "Didn't you say you're fine?" "It's a small injury, but it's nothing. How did you and your mother sleep last night?" "King Guyu didn't even mention your injury." "Can my mother and I sleep well?" Sulayun muttered, knowing that the injury should not be serious. "Ha ha." Suye laughed dryly. "Who were the assassins yesterday?" Sulayun suddenly lowered his voice and asked. Suye was stunned for a moment. The same group of people assassinated King An last time. Sulayun was not too surprised when his guess was confirmed. He just felt that his brother's reaction just now was a bit strange. "His Royal Highness said you would ask this question, and specifically asked me to answer you this way." The Highness Suye mentioned was naturally Xiao Shenjiao. Sulayun understood. No wonder his brother was surprised. With the assassination incident, Emperor Jianwen could not stay any longer. He sent the order and set off back to the capital at noon. Sulayun didn't know what happened to the assassins. "I only know that Zhang Yang returned to Mr. Zhang safely." Sulayun discussed with her mother for a long time, and the mother and daughter packed their bags and prepared to leave for Yunchinj to see their grandmother's hometown. Suye asked for orders to be stationed in the northwest, so that his second uncle could reunite with his second aunt and his family. "By chance, we can also send Sulayun and Sun Gro to Yunchinj." The Su family and the Lu family were exiled to the north, and the Li family and his wife also set out for the north again with the team. After staying in Yunchinj for many days, Sulayun took Sun Gro to another place. The mother and daughter traveled abroad for several years, and finally returned to the capital while waiting for news that Suye was getting married. Looking at the family reunion in the house, Sulayun couldn't help but blush. Although she has not done anything big in this life. But in the end, he saved his family. A few years later, my grandfather's son Xiao passed away. Although he was sad, Sulayun knew that his grandfather left with joy. After Suye got married, Sun Gro often mentioned Sulayun's marriage, but Sulayun used various reasons to shirk it. Gradually, Sun Gro also came to know that her daughter was afraid that she really had no interest in marriage, so she stopped talking about it. Now, Sun Gro stays in the capital to help Suye and his daughter-in-law take care of their children. Sulayun left the capital alone and traveled around. Such days are occasionally inconvenient, but Sulayun enjoys them. She wanted to live a new life, and she didn't want to spend her life stuck in a small house. The scenery outside is what she wants to see in her life. Complete full text. I am very grateful to the babies who have been with me for so long. I carefully read every comment you make and even your votes every day. I remember the online names of many book friends. This book is the first book I wrote. There are actually many problems with the text and plot. During the writing process, there were many times when the text stalled or crashed. Every time I think about everyone still waiting for me, I grit my teeth and persevere. I am very happy that Sulayun can accompany you through these few months. But it's also time for the end. Bow to everyone who accompanies me. A bow. 2 bows. 3 bows. Ha ha ha, I am very happy. Happy sincerely to everyone for supporting me as a newcomer. P.S. Let me secretly tell you about my other vest, Beiju Wine. The account that was just opened 2 months ago also wrote a book about real and fake daughters. The writing and plot should have improved a lot. This account may not be opened for the time being. Not necessarily, I am thinking about a new book, torn between farming articles and imaginative flow. Hands over before starting a new book. Everyone wave. Meet you at the new vest. Remember to search for Beiju wine. Don't search wrongly. I'll be squatting there waiting for you. End of this chapter.